TV just a figment of imagination.
Like interrupting you still, and that is I see bare Polish, bare Romanians, bare other nationals coming here as part of the European project, and they're working hard. And then I see quite a few English people just being lazy, just chilling. And I'm like, you know what? A lot of English people are joining the BNP or the UKIP movement and complaining about these foreigners coming over here taking jobs. Well, given the opportunity, a large number of those English people don't do those jobs because they're given the option to do the jobs first. They might feel, for example, oh, that job is beneath them, or that job is not what they want to do, or some fluff like that. Are you with me? You say the agencies are a problem. I'll tell you what the problem is in relation to that. The problem is, when you get the English people to do those jobs, they want to do less work for more pay. They want to do bare minimum for maximum pay. And that's, I'm not talking as a staunch capitalist or anything like that, because I'm just telling the real. The Polish guys, when they bring Polish guys over, the guys will work hard. Yeah. They will work from 9 to 5. You've been in the construction industry, you know, you see English guys work in comparison to the foreign guys, and they're like, yo, the English guys, we haven't got no energy, we haven't got any gumption, we don't work as hard as what they work, and we want more pay. It's like we complain all the time, and these guys are like grafting. The reason behind that is because we're comfortable. The reason behind that is because we're privileged. But even our underclass in this country are privileged. The poorest of this country are as well off as the middle class in many countries in Africa, or as well off as the middle class in many parts of India. And part of the reason why we don't raise up in this country, the part of the reason why the working class or the workers, or the poor class or the underclass or the untouchables or callers or the, whatever you want to call it in this country, part of the reason why they don't raise up is because we've got things too good. And when you've got things too, when you just give your dog just enough bones, just enough food, just enough water to keep it happy, the dog's going to be happy, wagging its tail every time master comes around. Yeah. And that's what happens. If they bring the Queen through Ghetto tomorrow, if they bring the Queen through any city in this country tomorrow, tomorrow, all the dogs will be wagging their tails. All the sheep will be going bar to the procession. All the fish will be swimming to go and see their Queen. You understand what I'm saying? Yes. When the actual fact is, she's a nasty, blood-sucking, nefarious, draconian, reptilian, some people say, shape-shifting, others say, child-sacrificing, others say, allegedly, child-sacrificing head of the corporation, or one of the CEOs of the bloodthirsty international white supremacist corporation, which keeps all those countries in the world behind, which feeds and fuels the CIA for their black ops operations, which feeds and fuels the European projects, the Council for the CFR, the Council for Foreign Relations, which feeds and fuels the Bilderbergers, the CFRers, the Bohemian Grovers, and the Cecil Rhodes Institutes, the Trilateral Commissions, the NATO organization, all of these different organizations and conglomerates which they have. She's one of the head people of that. And she put these systems in place to make sure that all the dogs around the world, if they're not happy, they're going to be dealt with what they call coercive force, where they're going to have military threatening them. You're going to have United Nations bases there, you're going to have United States bases there, so that the people in India, the people in even Poland today, the people in many parts of Africa, they've got foreign military, advanced military personnel in their places where they live. So they can't raise up. But in this country, they give us just enough milk and just enough honey. The streets are paved with gold still, just enough to keep us from raising up, to keep us from doing anything. There were blood clot, what them call them things there, so there were these Islam risings, Muslim Spring, Arab Springs, where people raised up, people died, they got rid of the elite.
Egypt,
but these elite in Egypt, don't forget 10, 20 years ago, you saw them in Britain, in the streets of Downing Street, shaking hands with our prime ministers. Yeah. You saw them riding around in Rolls Royces with the Queen and her representatives. So it's the Queen. These people are look, what we don't understand is that the systems in every country in the world today that are in place, they have at their head somebody at the top of their pyramid, right? And the person at the top of their pyramid is the Queen, is the Vatican, are the Illuminati, are these people, these rich Zionists, or whoever you want to call them. There's a few people. Some people say, Professor Griff will say the 13 bloodlines, the third, whatever. However you want to call them, there's a few people at the top that run things. And it's Western education in Africa, it's Western education in Asia, it's Western forms of economics and business policies, it's Western forms of finance, which is a big industry in the world, it's Western forms of politics, it's Western forms of education, it's Western forms of legal, everything, every system which we have in the world today has been not evolutionary developed. It's not developed through evolution of tried and tested, and we took the best systems to work, because these are not the best systems. Every system which we have in the world, in every area of life, economic, social, political, legal, financial, familial, in every area of life, you must understand it, in every area of life, every system which we are governed by and live by in the world today is by white supremacy, is by capitalism, is by European system. And from the time you have Africans adopting, from the time you have Asians adopting European systems, then you're going to play the rules by their game. You're going to play the game by their rules. Then you're not going to have any advantage from that. You understand? So when you have this Arab Spring and they replace one dictator for an elected dictator, but they're still playing by the same rules, still the West wins. And if the people in these areas, if the people in Libya, for example, say, look, we don't want to play by the West rules anymore, we're going to change one of the rules of the game. And one of the rules of the game that we're going to change are that we no longer want to trade our oil for US dollars. We no longer want to trade in petrodollars. We now want to trade in African gold dinar. We want gold-backed currency as opposed to modern-day fiat currency, which is debtor-based, slave-based currency, which comes from slavery. They call it slave-based because it comes from slavery. But we'll expand on that another time or whenever. So when Libya did this as one of these third world countries or second world countries or developing countries, what happened? They came in, they destroyed...
You can't do that.
They destroyed the countries.
Yeah.
They destroyed the leader. They destroyed the infrastructure. So when... There's only a couple of other countries in the world now, right now today, which don't have their systems completely 100% run by this 13 bloodlines or by the Illuminati or by the Queen and the Vatican. And one of those was Syria. Another one of those is Iran. Another one of those is partially China, even though China's playing part of the experimental program which these guys have to see how many billions of people they can control using their nefarious system of communism, which came from Russia, which is now coming into capitalism. So
what's it called? State-sponsored capitalism.
That's exactly what they call it. But we know what it is. They've got all the guns, they've got all the police with guns ready to murder you if you want to try and rise above your
That's
station.
just for families, isn't it, really? So in China, it's just for rich families, really.
Well, they say that in 20 years in China there's going to be, I think the number was 200, it's either 40 million millionaires or 200 million millionaires. So in China, for example, if there's going to be 40 million millionaires, that's like for close to almost every single country, every person in this country being a millionaire. We've got 56 million in this country, so imagine 40 million millionaires. I think it's actually 200 million, I can't remember the figure, but that's how many they're going to be in 10 20 years. Millions of them. So that's good for them because they control their people and they extract maximum revenue, they extract maximum energy out of their workers, out of their slaves, out of their sheep, out of their happy dogs, lappy dogs with their wagging tails.
Well, how happy are they? I mean, they dragged a lot of their people into the new age, didn't they, in China?
So so in relation to that, would we prefer to be living in the Stone Ages, living with nature, living happy, living with society? And in some respects, you know, I say it like in those terms, which has a negative connotation to going backward technologically, but in some respects, the technological advancement is leading to the increase and the acceleration of world exploitation, of world resource obliteration. Is leading to the destruction of the earth itself in some respects, so we could argue that. But then there's a counter argument to that to say, well, look, climate change is not real, it's not happening. But then,
it's a natural process.
I remember when I was a child, they talked about there's going to be a big freeze and the world is going to be freezing in 10 years. 10 years later, they're talking about the world is going to be warmer in 10 years. Another 5 years after that, they're talking about, oh, now they don't even call it global warming anymore. Now they just call it climate change.
Climate change.
And climate does change. The weather changes, we know that. It changes naturally or changes supernaturally, it just changes. And that's what the weather does.
Do you think the change of the climate is somehow connected to us? That's us hominins, us humans on this planet.
It's an interesting question, and you would like to think that the Earth is a living organism, and as a living organism, then that organism can sense that the people living within it, or the parasite, or the virus, or the humans living in her as an organic unit, would detect that it's being quite harmful, would detect that it's being quite bad, and therefore it will raise some form of natural or supernatural disaster or catastrophe or happening to get rid of them. Or you could say that God in the Bible is written, and in the Quran is written, and in the Great Vedas is written that in certain times when civilizations gain the maximum amount of technological advancement that they can possibly achieve, then they will be given the quest as to whether they turn godly or turn into devils. And it seems that most civilizations up until this point in history have turned into self-abasement, have turned into self-aggrandizement, have turned into self-appreciation and self-satisfaction, rather than giving praise and rather than looking out for the earth and rather than looking out for everybody else. It's just the rich that want to explore their own perversions at the cost of everybody else.
Yeah, that leads me to this idea, this concept, this idea that, you know, we can't escape it, because I believe we're happy as humans. We're happy in the conditions we are. We're happy with the way it is. I think we are very happy.
So if you're happy, good for you.
I'm not happy. I'm saying on a mass. I said the consensus is happy. The way we are, the way the world is. It's an accepted part of it. Charity work we do every so often in the common relief. I can give a little money, so I'm doing a little bit. Even though we know that might end up only a small percentage of that money that you're giving is going to go to somewhere. You know yourself. That's why you avoid giving charities.
That's I've done some charity work because I sat down, blood, in July. But I think it was July the 13th or August the 13th last year. And I saw on the TV one of the rare glimpses, or one of the rare times I actually sit down and catch a glimpse of the TV. I saw on the TV there was a massive flood in the Ganga Delta, and hundreds of thousands of people are losing their lives. Hundreds of thousands of people are starving. And I felt in my stomach that, oh, this ain't right. Mans need to do something about this. So I tried to get a couple of people motivated to help Mans with this particular project and go over there and at least spread a look of love, to let people elsewhere know that, to let little children over there know that there are bigger people around the world that will think of them if they're in their plight, and will come and actually not just think of them and give tuppence or give £5 or £10, but will actually get up and try and do something to help them out. And so there are ongoing projects which I have for charity, but saying that doesn't mean that man's happy. Man says, no, I'm not happy. I'm never really happy. If I know that just across the border or just across the water, we've got children suffering, we've got people in sweatshop slavery, we've got children in Africa right now today who are in child slavery for you to have that nice smartphone that you've got. There are ingredients in that phone that come from our slave brothers in Congo, in many parts of Africa, the raw metals, the raw resources. And we're over here. So yeah, in some respect, we are happy because we have our technology, we have our gadgets, we have our stuff. And we think, well, we were lucky to be born here in this situation, so why do I care about anybody else? But I'm one of those geezers, and I do at times let my emotions take over me. And that's what happens in terms of me trying to do some charity. If I could, then I would change the world. And I'm trying to change the world just a little bit, a little bit by a little bit.
Okay, do you think that...
So I'm certainly not happy. And I'm sure there are other people which are certainly not happy. And it's this growing fundamental emotion of discontent, this growing fundamental emotion of being unhappy, which is fueling the change which we're seeing, because I think that change is inevitable.
Do you think the change that maybe you and I may like to see is going to come after something catastrophic happens, rather than
what's more? Well, anytime people talk about doomsday scenario, I know you've not said that, but you're implicating that. Anytime people mention doomsday scenarios, all I can say to them is, look, I remember, I think it was 2005, 2006, a few years ago, Indonesia had a big typhoon. Indonesia had a big tsunami, right? 450,000 people, over 500,000 people were dead, murdered from that typhoon, from that tsunami. Now, how much more apocalyptic, how much more catastrophic do you want than that? So in terms of that, catastrophe happens every day. In terms of that, apocalyptic visions and realities happen every single day. But if you're talking about a worldwide scale, no, the world will keep going, and pockets will be eradicated and wiped out through natural disasters all the time, or through even some man-made disasters, because I'm not saying that's completely natural what's happening. I'm saying I'm open to the idea that some so-called natural disasters are influenced by mankind's tinkering with what we know about physical science, with CERN, with DARPA, with Project Bluebeam, with other projects that these people are pushing. But in terms of making a change happen, I think that the biggest catastrophe is that we're living in comfort over here. And because we're in comfort, we don't care about anybody else. Because we're in comfort, we don't care about the child who's living in the slums of New Delhi. Because we're in comfort, we don't care about the child that's working 15 hours a day without safety helmet or without safety equipment in modern day child slavery in Africa to extract the cobalt and the tungsten for your mobile phone. That's a blood clot travesty, G. There's no more, what more travesty do you want? We're sitting here like we're the poor people in this country, but we're not poor. We're rich in comparison to people everywhere else. And that's the catastrophe, is that we're over here. This land, England, Great Britain, and the United States of America, Great Britain, the land of the sinking sand, right here. I call it the land of the sinking sand. And I've said that from the times I used to sing back in the day. I said, this is the land of the sinking sand, because we think we can stand, but we can't stand in the sinking sand. Because what happens is you sink in a sinking sand. And that's what we're doing here. Our moral efficacy, our moral fibre is sinking in this land here. I was born into poverty and I was born into righteousness. I think that when you're poor, you're righteous. That's what I think. I think you're a poor, righteous teacher when you're poor. As soon as you get rich, as soon as you get affluent, you forget your morals. You forget your righteous behavior and activity. That's why Jesus the Christ said, or that's why it's written in the Bible, that it's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than what it is for a rich man to get into the gates of heaven. That's what they say. You ever heard that?
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of that, I believe that here in this land of the sinking sand, they keep these lapdogs happy, keep us wagging our tails by giving us just enough to keep us in that situation.
Placation. Yes.
They keep us placated, yeah. They keep us satisfied.
Yeah, and that's society, isn't it? Though that's modern society.
Yeah, it's modern
in a way, the thing behind being like that.
I think that to some extent or another, I believe that those people who have their hands on the world's resources, they are in cahoots with nefarious and dark forces. I think that's got to be the case, because how otherwise can you sit down and rationalize having such a large chunk of the cake, having 99% of the cake, when 99% of the people of the world have only 1 or 2% of the cake? And you've got all of that cake. You can't take any of it with you. You just want to give it to your family. Well, you're giving them too much. You've got trillions and billions and quadrillions of billions of dollars. They've got too much money, too much resources, but they want all of that for their own intents and purposes. And what their intents and purposes are, if you analyze it, if you look at it, if you try and rationalize it, which is what you're asking me to do, I think that they're in cahoots with some dark demon forces, with some dark devilish forces. I think at the end of the day, it's got to do with God and it's got to do with the devil. And these people are working for the devil. That's why the world is going the way it's going. We know which way it's going because all the signs are there. They're bringing in, you ever heard of this cat called Baphomet? You know the devil, the Satan, and Baphomet.
Baphomet.
Okay, it's a devil figure. And what this figure is, it's a figure of a man with a penis and also with a woman's breast. It's like an androgynous, transgender thing.
Yeah.
And they made it, people say, oh, you go with all that bigoted stuff. I'm like, I'll talk my talk. You talk your talk and walk how you want to walk. I'm telling you how I feel. They made these people now into like godlike figures, into like demigods in modern society.
Transgender, LGBT.
Transgender, LGBT, they're getting all the advantages right now. But I'm not going to say that some of them aren't suffering, that some of them don't need it, some of them possibly quite probably do. But they're 0.001% of a population. So why they have so many resources and media attention, it beggars belief. But there's an undercurrent, a darker support for them. And that darker support for them are these people in these dark, demonic, Masonic, Illuminati, death cabals, call them Freemasons, call them devil worshippers. Look at the rise of the satanic church in America. Just do a Google search. I mean, don't believe me, but do a Google. Google search Satan churches in America. Since the 1930s, the satanic churches in America have quadrupled. They've gone up like 100-fold. And before, in America, people would say that devil worshipping was a very bad thing. But now, devil worshipping is an equal thing. There were a few months ago, they were even allowing Satan worshippers to give Satan worshipping books out to school children. So you're asking me, what do I think is in their minds or in their hearts? And they've got nothing but dark in their heart. They've got nothing but demonic and nefarious belief in their heart. And what the end result of that is, if we go to the end game. The end game is God versus the devil. And God gave the devil this world. God gave the evil this world. And the devil is running the world like it is his world. And he wants to prove to God that he will win this world. But I have a belief that there are good people in the world. There are beautiful people in the world that will sacrifice even their life, which is the example of Jesus Christ. But not just to give up and die, because anybody can die and commit suicide or put on a suicide vest and blow themselves up and kill others as well. It's not about creating destruction, but it's about trying to create positivity. So if you have one person from the UK or 20 people from the UK and 200 from America that go around the world and spread love and spread help and spread health, then they can't stop the rise of goodness. And I think that evil is like a really dark room, like a really pitch black room. Dark, triple darkness. You go in the room and you light this, you can't see nothing. That's what evil is. But then all it takes is one small candle or one little matchstick to go into that big dark room and light up the small candle. And that one small candle will light up the whole room. Now the equivalent physical worth of that one candle might be 1 centimetre, and the room is, let's call it 10 metres square, so 10,000 times the size of that one little candle. You understand me? All it takes is one little candle, 20 people from the UK, 100 from America, to go into these places around the world and spread some love and give some help and give some hope to the poorer people, which are the righteous people, the pure people. Because you go to these, I've been to a couple of slums, you go there, the people in poverty are happy. Genuinely, they're like full of life, they're full of positivity, they're full of hope. But hope without consequence is a fool's errand. Hope without deliverance is a fool's errand. So we need to give them some kind of hope to be hoping for. That's what I'm saying. Rather than just sitting back on our laurels and wagging our tails and waiting for the master to come on the plantation and give us a good pat on the back.
See, that's where I am right now, man.
You've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Hey there, thanks for watching. If you like that video, click here to subscribe. Just keep the mouse pointer away from my face, please. Don't, here, click here to, not my face, click here, please. Please, that looks, don't do that, that's sharp, click here.